There's a lot we can say about the manipulative tactic that we call gaslighting. And there's a lot that I personally have already said. But today I want to share what I think is the most important piece of information on this topic. And that is how to handle it if you think you're dealing with malicious gaslighting in your life. So today I want to share 5 ways to deal with gaslighting in your personal life. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Common Ego community. My name is Christina, and on this channel we talk about emotional abuse. We often connect it with spirituality, and most importantly, we attempt to answer the question, where do we go from here? So if those topics sound interesting to you, go ahead and subscribe and hit that bell icon so you can be notified whenever I post new content. So today we're talking again about malicious gaslighting. I've done a couple of videos on the subject of gaslighting, and I'm going to link to those here because they contain some important information that I'm not going to cover here. So the first video is Gaslighting Explained. And in that video, I talk about what gaslighting really is. It's an often misunderstood, emotionally abusive tactic. And recently I released a video about gaslighting phrases, common gaslighting phrases. So I'm going to link to those 2 here. In those videos, I gave a couple of tips on what to do if you think you are experiencing gaslighting in your life. And today I just wanted to pull it together and put together a concise list of some actions that you could take if you're dealing with somebody who is maliciously gaslighting you. I said concise, so we're going to jump right into it. Now, in my last video, Common Gaslighting Phrases, I mentioned, and I think some people missed it, but I mentioned what we're talking about here are patterns of behavior. So we're looking for patterns of this type of behavior. It's not just about one phrase and identifying that phrase and then deciding whether you want to continue this relationship or not. The truth is, none of us are perfect, and we can all say things from time to time that we shouldn't say. And some phrases that emotionally abusive people commonly use when they're gaslighting can have different meaning in a different context. And I want to give you an example so this doesn't end up confusing the issue even more. So one example, and I even talked about this in the video, is I didn't say that. That's a common gaslighting phrase, but it could also be true. Somebody maybe didn't say that. Maybe you did remember it wrong. But again, when we're talking about malicious gaslighting, we're really talking about behavioral patterns. So this is somebody who never remembers saying the things that you know they said. Maybe even you have other people who heard them say it. So it's not the phrase itself that makes it gaslighting. And I think that's a really important distinction that I know some people missed. So I wanted to make sure to call that out here. And again, I said I wanted to keep this video concise. So I'm not going to go super deep into identifying gaslighting because I do cover that in my video Gaslighting Explained. So if you feel like you're still a little bit confused about whether there's gaslighting going on in your life, I suggest watching that video. One of the most important things throughout all of this is how you feel in this relationship. So if you find yourself doubting yourself or constantly apologizing when you're around this person, and you don't feel that way when you're outside of this relationship, there's a good chance that you are dealing with emotional abuse. So the second way you can deal with malicious gaslighting is by calling out the behavior. But I want to caution you because this is not going to be a good idea in every case. It's going to be up to you to determine whether you feel safe in doing so. So if you're dealing with somebody who is violent or physically abusive, it's not going to be a good idea. But also, if you're dealing with a truly vindictive narcissist and you feel like calling them out might cause more harm to you, it might not be something you want to do. But there may be some times when somebody is actually maliciously gaslighting you and they're being nasty and they just clearly want to make you feel bad. Calling them out and calling attention to the behavior, especially if it's around other people, can help to call attention to the fact that it's not okay, that we shouldn't treat people that way. So the third way you can deal with gaslighting is by cutting the person out of your life. And again, this isn't going to work in every situation. So if you are dealing with a coworker who's gaslighting you or a boss, it's not going to be very easy to cut that person out of your life. But even if it's a family member or a spouse, These things can be very complicated. And it's up to each of us to make that decision. It is not up to any of us to decide what somebody else should do in their life and with their relationship. So there are a lot of reasons why people stay with somebody who is emotionally abusive. And doing so involves a lot of personal sacrifice. But that is that person's decision to make. So this third tip is about making that decision. Can you leave this relationship? And if so, when can you leave this relationship? And if you decide you can't leave this relationship, you might find the next tips helpful. So the fourth way you can deal with gaslighting is to start keeping records of what happened. Now, again, you have to decide in your own personal situation whether you can actually write things down or keep recordings of what's going on. If you're afraid the other person might find them and there might be consequences to that, you have to do what you feel is going to keep you safe. If you're not worried about this, keeping a journal is a great idea, or recording your thoughts right after you have an experience that makes you question yourself or makes you feel particularly confused. These things can help when you look back at them later to see really what went on. Because as I've mentioned in a previous video, gaslighting is kind of almost like the shapeshifter of emotional abuse terminology. And there are other tactics that go very much hand in hand with gaslighting. The narcissist's word salad is another one that can be so infuriating and can really make you question your own sanity. So if you're concerned with keeping any sort of physical record on your computer or at your home, another thing you can do is talk to somebody you trust. So this could be a friend or a family member, or it could be a therapist. But talking to somebody can serve a lot of the same purposes as recording things. And it has the added benefit of getting an outside perspective on what's going on. So the fifth way you can deal with gaslighting is to focus on yourself. And you can do this whether you stay in the relationship or not. Of course, it's going to be easier if you can leave that relationship. But either way, working on boosting your self-worth and self-esteem is going to help kind of counter the negative effects that the gaslighting is having on your life. So try to focus on the things that make you happy. Maybe it's picking up a new hobby or an old hobby that you let go. What I'm talking about here are the things that we just love doing so much that when we start, we kind of almost get lost into it. You get into that flow state and you lose all track of time. These are the things that light us up from the inside. And when we're doing these things, we're in it. We're not really worried about what anyone else is doing or thinking. We're not overthinking or ruminating. We're not replaying conversations in our head or letting other people's perception of us get in there. When you're in that zone, you're feeling good. And that's what this is about. This is about doing more of that, feeling good. And you can also spend time with people who make you feel the same way. So those are the 5 tips I have for you to deal with malicious gaslighting in your own life. If you found this video helpful, please let me know by hitting that like button. And if you'd like to see more like it, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next time.